Well, hello, free people of the Rocky Mountain region, and welcome to this Free State Colorado interview. Today, I'm joined by Jason Bailey, founder of Citizens for No New Debt. Jason has been a leading voice in the fight against the city of Denver's push to take on billions of dollars in debt. Well, Jason, I hope you are well, and thank you for joining me today.
Oh, Brandon, thank you for having me. Appreciate it very much.
Well, Jason, let's start with the basics here. What do people need to know about what Denver's trying to do, especially in relation to this ballot measure that voters are going to be voting on?
Well, yeah, this November 4th, the voters of Denver are going to be voting on about 950 million in new debt. I call it the Christmas list that has been put together by the mayor, Mayor Johnston, and Denver City Council. They, along with their financial staffers, the CFO for the city, Nicole Doheny, for example, the politicians and the financial staffers, created all this new debt, and then they're going to take it to the voters. They would rather not take it to the voters, but when they do take it to voters, at least they have an excuse. They can blame the voters if the voters do say yes. I think we're going to win in November, and we're going to defeat this new debt because it makes no sense. But let's be sure that it was the mayor and the Denver City Council and their financial staffers that have created this debt package.
So they're asking Denver voters to approve nearly $1 billion to for the city to take out in terms of debt, and what are they going to use the money for?
Well, yeah, I mean, they have a whole laundry list of shopping that they want to get done, from parks to recreational centers. Some road work over there, getting ready to subsidize the new Broncos stadium. And have the workers who make $20 an hour at the restaurants, and the retail workers, they're going to buy a new Broncos stadium for the billionaires like the Waltons, who own some of this NFL franchise. The NFL makes billions of dollars, and they make so much money. They pay their employees millions of dollars to play football, and we're supposed to buy their stadium. And they exploit the citizens of the city by pitting two different cities against each other for all this corporate welfare. It's just unbelievable that they do that when they have billions of dollars. They expect the teachers, the nurses, the truck drivers, the retail workers, the restaurant workers to subsidize the National Football League. But anyhow, that's a tangent. But a lot of that bond project is going to go for some infrastructure upgrades for that whole situation, and that's why I bring it up. But a problem with debt. Every time we use debt, we're spending twice as much money for that bridge and twice as much money for that road, and of course that just makes no sense. So whether you think what we're buying with this debt is a good idea or not, it's always makes sense to never pay twice as much for what you're buying. You wouldn't pay twice as much in your personal life. And if you do, that's your personal decision anyhow. It's not the government. Our government needs to spend less money, not more money.
Yeah, fair point there. And I think that's really an interesting and compelling argument, because some people might say, hey, the city of Denver, they need to do some repairs, right? There needs to be some infrastructure investment. There needs to be some things done to kind of liven up the city or make it more vibrant, as the mayor says, right? So, hey, but they're not going to raise taxes. They can actually just take out the debt. It doesn't increase taxes on the people. And some people might think that's a good thing. But like you said, there's another side to the story that's really not widely reported. And I really appreciate you getting it out there to people, is that, this $1 billion in new debt that the city wants to take on ends up costing $2 billion or so. Is that accurate?
Well, straight from Nicole Doheny, the chief financial officer, she said that this debt could cost up to 2 billion. I'm estimating somewhere between 500 million and 900 million in wasted money, that they'll take our money, our tax money, and they'll give it to the banks, whatever banks they work with, Goldman Sachs, Barclays, Chase Bank. So it's trickle up, and they take our money and give it to the financial systems, or give it to the NFL. And so, I mean, if you want a vibrant Denver, you want downtown Denver to do better. We need to reduce that financial gap. The financial gap is the problem, but the politicians think corporate welfare and giving 500 million to the businesses downtown and buying storefronts. And what I mean by that is paying enormous amounts of money for businesses just to have a storefront, just to pretend there's success happening down there. And it's taking hundreds of thousands of dollars for individual retail businesses, and so that corporate welfare is only adding to the financial gap, because corporate welfare trickles up a heck of a lot more than it trickles down. And so the problem is we're only making the problem worse. The city of Denver had 15,000 evictions recorded last year, I think. I think the actual number of evictions that were not recorded would probably be twice that amount. The financial gap is the problem. I did business for 40 years, and we're not gonna fix downtown Denver with more corporate welfare. This just makes no sense.
No, that's a good point. And I definitely encourage people to check out your website because you really get a lot of information out there and really share some ideas that I necessarily hadn't heard before. But it makes a lot of sense once I started reading what you had to say. And this idea that, who benefits from these bond packages, right? I mean, who's going to profit off of it? And you're right, these corporate banks, these financial institutions are going to make half a billion or, $500 million to nearly $1 billion off
Yes.
this one bond package. And that's pretty
Yeah.
crazy because that's money that the taxpayers are end up paying in the long run. So it's really a system in which, you're almost subsidizing the banks in addition to subsidizing all these other corporate type of entities. And yeah, it seems like kind of like a total scam. But what's your 30-second elevator pitch to somebody when you're talking to them out in the community? And what would you say just to bring them up to speed in terms of what this bond package does, why they should be against it?
Yeah, well, if you're on the left, you should be against this bond package because this debt just takes our government budget and gives it to the banks. If you're on the left, understand we can buy twice as many parks per dollar of revenue when we do not use debt. We can buy twice as many recreational centers per dollar of revenue. If we looked at all the money that we gave to the banks over the past 5 years, we could have already bought everything on Mayor Mike Johnston's Christmas list. It would have already been bought and paid for, but we're giving that money to the banks. And if you're on the right, of course, we realize that the debt just drives taxes up. There's they talk about no new taxes, but government debt will always drive taxes up because it's impossible to get the banks paid back without twice as much tax money. It's just basic math. So government debt at face value, it makes no sense. I don't focus on how much debt we already have, whether it's the city of Denver or any other government agency, or what the politicians say they're going to buy with this debt. I don't focus on that so much because I know that government debt makes no sense at face value, and that's a principle that I talk about all the time. And the more we can get people to understand this, the better off we'll be, not only from the left but from the right as well.
Definitely, and I think, it can resonate with people because it's this idea of living beyond your means, right? Us as individual homeowners, or, having a family, or business owners even, right? We all have a budget we got to stay within. And we all know, if we have some financial education, we know that taking on credit card debt or other types of debt, you end up paying a lot more in the long run. And it's not necessarily a winning bargain. So it's the same thing with governments, right? There's no free money out there. There's no free lunch. The money's got to come from somewhere. So, making these promises and all these pie in the sky dreams, and then it ends up costing twice as much in the long run. I mean, gosh, it's just a bad investment, it seems to me.
It's short-sighted nonsense. It's causing long-term problems. This idea about no new taxes is just total nonsense. That will always drive taxes up. And I'm all for a mortgage. I have a mortgage on my condo here. All forms of debt need to be looked at for what they are. Mortgage debt makes sense because it's better than renting. Government debt never makes sense. Business debt can make sense. With a business, what you're trying to do with your debt is increase your productivity, increase your revenue. You're trying to take it up like that, and then you pay off that debt and you put some profit in your pocket. Now, our government on a fixed needs to see itself as a fixed budget, We need to see our government budgets as a fixed budget. The very idea that you would take out debt to try to up your revenue. Well, our government should not be planning revenue like this. That makes no sense. There, with business, you're trying to take your revenue up. Our government is overhead. With overhead, you're trying to make it smaller, not bigger. And business is about productivity. Our government is 70-80% overhead. Well, you want to, whether you're in business or government or your personal life, you want to take your overhead down as much as possible. So government debt just never makes sense. It's a very different model than business debt or a home mortgage. And our politicians love to talk about government debt in the same terms as business debt. I talked to Mike Johnston. I said, hey, this debt, it's not an investment, it's a liability, because he loves to say, hey, he's always talking about investing in Denver. I mean, it's a liability. He goes, well, it's both. I said, well, okay, you have, eight parts investment and 16 parts liability. So you take 16 minus 8, you have 8 parts liability remaining. So it just, it makes no sense.
I mean, do they think that, in terms of the investment aspect to it, just to play devil's advocate or this argument that if they take on this debt, they invest it into the city, they're going to improve things so much that they're going to increase tax revenue from people moving in and driving up property taxes, filling up all those vacant properties, and then providing additional sales tax and revenue that way? Is that kind of what they're trying to make the argument for?
Oh, that's always one of the underlying arguments that they make. Of course, the increase in additional tax revenue is going to be much smaller than the increase in additional expense going to Chase Bank. Once again, we get back to what's the real problem. Is the real problem a lack of sales tax, or is the real problem what's causing that lack of sales tax? Which is a financial divide, and that's just it's so vivid downtown. I mean, Brandon, if you have trash all over the city from people who can't afford to get the rent paid, and therefore they become homeless, that's hurting all our businesses. All of this poverty that's manifesting is the problem. And the idea that, well, okay, so to fix this, we'll give more money to the billionaires, and that'll bring in more business and more sales tax. It's like, wait, hang on. The problem is the gap. I don't mean to belabor that, but so the idea that we're going to use corporate welfare to drive up sales tax, well, you might drive up sales tax a little bit, this much, and you're going to drive up expenses. You're going to trickle up our tax money this much. I did business for 40 years. I had a restaurant for 14 years. I do what I do because I saw how much struggle these employees for restaurants go through, and how much tax we take out of their check, and the head tax, and then the city of Denver calls it an occupational privilege tax. The head tax, and then you got to take it from the employee and the business, on and on and on, and so this is why I do what I do, because we need to make it we need to focus on basic success, and I call it success in the first place, for the people who live in the city, the people who are working at the restaurants, working at the teachers. City council is always saying, oh, we need more affordable housing for our firefighters and our police officers and our teachers. I'm like, hey, let's start with the obvious. Let's pay them more money. You need the idea that you create success in the first place, not the idea that people won't be able to afford to pay their bills, but the city of Denver will step in and buy you a house. This logic makes no sense. And until we get to success in the first place, the problem's just going to get bigger. And the very idea that the government's going to step in and do things for less money than the private market and make and bring about success. Socialism has never worked. It never does. It's got a long history, of bankruptcy.
Definitely. And I really appreciate that perspective too. This idea that you have to have kind of the fundamentals right. You know what I mean? You have to have a true vibrant economy,
Yeah,
where
exactly.
people can have businesses, employ people, pay people, and then now all of a sudden, you have people making money. You have people who can afford to shop there and live there and things
Yeah.
like that. But if you don't have that, if you're just treating the symptoms rather than the cause of the
Yes,
issue,
exactly.
that then you're never going to actually change anything. I heard the term doom loop a couple years ago, and I've really been, always thinking about that when I hear something about Denver and some of the problems down there. Is this
Yeah.
idea that you get your tax base to flee, whether it's your businesses or your individual taxpayers, they leave the city, they leave the community. Then there's less money for the basic infrastructure, which can lead to more crime, homelessness. Like you said, the trash on the streets, all of that, which creates even more people wanting to leave and flee the city and more businesses wanting to go. And then it just spirals, it just continues on. And you have to kind of break that cycle. You have to create a situation in which businesses want to be able to operate in the city. They want to employ people in the city and they want to give people an opportunity to improve their lives.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, the government doesn't seem to operate that way, do they?
No, and especially Denver City Council, it's socialism, and so a couple more points of that doom loop is, for example, the Denver City Council, they continuously demonize home builders and the developers. The developers make things unaffordable according to their logic. They don't understand basic supply and demand. So if the problem is, if you're demonizing developers, you're going to get less developers wanting to build in your city, and then that's going to drive rent prices up. So there's only one thing that brings rent prices down. That's supply. It's always been that way. Supply and demand is not a theory. It's been around for thousands of years. It's the way things work. If you have two boats and you got one buyer, you're going to reduce the price of your boats by a long ways. If you have one boat and you got two buyers, well, you can have a premium pricing. It's just so basic. It's common sense. So that if you're constantly demonizing development and wondering why rents are so high and people can't afford rents, maybe you should plug into to reality. Supply and demand. Another aspect contributing to that doom loop is this demonization of the vehicle. More and more just clogging up the roads with a bus lane on one side and a bike lane on the other side. And if you stand there and count with that clicker, there's at least 100 cars per bike, at least 100 cars per person in each bus. If you count the cars that go by on, say, South Broadway and the people in the buses, that bus lane, if every single person in that bus had their very own vehicle, would be by far the slowest lane of all the lanes on Broadway. So it's like, you guys aren't relieving traffic. Don't think that's happening. You're backing it up. So, if you're just backing up traffic all throughout Denver because you demonize the vehicle, then that's reducing productivity, reducing the ability for people to get around and get things done. And so that's adding to that doom loop. And I'm optimistic. I love Denver. This is my town, but we gotta make changes, and that's why I'm doing what I do. I went to the city council meetings every week for 2 years and just talked with them, and I just came to the conclusion I'm talking to the wall, and that's one of the reasons why I formed this organization to make change from the outside at the ballot box, and that's what we'll do this November on this step package.
Awesome. We'll definitely applaud your efforts. I think showing up to city council meetings is one of the most impactful things individuals can do across Colorado. I've said it before, but you show up to one city council meeting and you're going to be better informed than 80, 90% of the people in your community. You're going to understand how the city's spending your money, what kind of zoning is going on, what businesses are coming, which ones are going. You're going to learn a lot. And really, that information and just showing up is really the first step to really trying to accomplish anything, politically speaking. But I'm really compelled too with the just this idea that the city council is so out of touch, and they're really making mistakes that are, like you said, demonizing home builders, demonizing people driving. I mean, I don't know who said it, but the somebody had said at some point that a car, owning a vehicle is one of the biggest indicators of somebody's ability to have upward mobility, right? Because now if you have a car, you can go look for another job. Maybe it's a little further away, but it pays better. If you're relying on public transit or a scooter or something like that, it's going to be a lot. You're going to be very limited in terms of what kind of jobs you can find. But having a car gives you all this access to economic opportunities. And when they try and restrict the individual's ability to travel for work, you're restricting their economic opportunities, and you're creating a system in which, people become trapped, and that is not ideal at all. And speaking of travel, Jason, I know you write and talk about the airport with DIA. What can you tell us about what's going on with DIA?
The airport has so much debt, and you know, about 10 billion and more in debt. 40% of all revenue at that airport goes for debt service. It's just an unbelievable amount of money. 554 million went to debt service last year at that airport on about 1.5 billion in revenue. That's a debt to revenue of 700%. The airport, they rip us off when we park our cars there. We're back to cars, and oh well, if we rip off the citizens at the airport, then they'll be less likely to drive their car. The whole Denver City Council, they think they're going to push us into buses. Well, we're not going into buses. We love our cars. I remember when I was 15, I bought a car and started driving it before I was 16, because I just, we love our cars here in America, and we always will, because that's that mobility, And, speaking of cars, what the Denver City Council needs to understand, if they want retail and restaurants in this business, you need parking spaces, and they just keep getting rid of the parking spaces. I had a restaurant, Brandon, for 14 years by the Denver Art Museum. And here's the thing. If you're at that restaurant for 8 hours or 10 hours, you see that 5 parking spaces will be used every 10, 15 minutes on and off, all day long. And so that's, hundreds of people stopping to run in and get food or eat something quick and run, whether it's a retail store or a restaurant, per day with 5 spaces. You get rid of those 5 spaces. You just affected 60-70% of the revenue for that small retail place or that small business. I don't think anybody on Denver City Council has ever had a retail business. I could be off on that. I doubt it, because they just don't understand this concept. If they would go to some of these retail places and just stay for 8 to 10 hours and watch those cars in front pull in and out of those spots, the minute one car takes off, another car is right behind them, parking right there, and that happens all day long. But the Denver City Council, they don't realize that. And we had 23% of the restaurants closed last year. You need parking. Anyhow, back to the airport. It's ridiculous how much money they charge us on parking, and they justify that, Brandon, in large part by saying, "Well, don't drive." Oh, okay, I'll take the bus. No, I won't take the bus. The bus, no one wants to be on that bus anymore. And the buses are mostly empty. It's such a shame, the RTD. I mean, most of these buses are mostly empty. And the internet basically did away with mass transit as we know it. Between Uber and Lyft and what you and I are doing right now, Zoom and Google Meet and DoorDash and Grubhub, there are just thousands of applications where, so many people don't need to go to the office and back every single day, 5 days a week on that bus or any other form of transportation. And, you only ride a bus if you have to. And I don't want to take a ride from anybody who needs a ride. If somebody is poor and they need a ride, or they're elderly and they need a ride, I want them to have a ride. But I don't want huge, enormous buses and then more and more bus lanes on our roads. And these huge, enormous buses are mostly empty. This makes no sense. The RTD needs to evolve into the age of the internet.
Yeah, it's definitely a good example of how bad central planning can be. We're an entrepreneur, a business owner, right? They have to get creative and come up with solutions to try and get that market demand. And then you have the government, the politicians trying to really just force ideas on people that are not necessarily popular or are interested in doing. I mean, that's a big challenge I think Denver's going to face. Getting rid of parking minimums for new housing, of course, is what big issue. And then all the BRT along Colfax and this new bus lanes signs and eliminating parking. You're just making it less desirable for people to go down there for shopping, for entertainment, for all of it, and making it much more difficult. So yeah, there's a huge trade-off there, and unfortunately, the Denver City Council really needs to get their act together. But Jason, I really applaud your efforts at the local level because that's, I think, where we can have the biggest impact to get involved, to have a voice, show up at City Council, and organize. Get organized around specific things like a ballot measure, like you are, specific principles and policies, like not
Yes.
taking on government debt. So I encourage people to kind of follow your lead there. But kind of, what are some of your final thoughts here, and what can people do to kind of support your efforts?
Well, hey, Brandon, thank you so much. So our website is citizensfornonewdebt.org. Please take a look. We do need to do some advertising over the next couple months. If you can make a donation to the campaign, that would be very, very helpful. Mayor Johnston and the Denver City Council, they're putting out their propaganda almost on a daily basis about this debt package. We're going to all have more money when we don't use debt, government debt. So citizensfornonewdebt.org. Please take a look at our website. I think you'll be impressed with some of the stories we have on that website. And we got about what 70, 80 days to communicate our message, and then we'll be voting on November 4th.
Yep, the election's coming up quick, and I think letting people know about the election, I think, is the most important thing. There's so many people out there who don't know we have a 2025 election. A lot of different important issues are going to be voted on, candidates for
Mhm.
office, and so people get involved, show up, and pay attention. But really appreciate your time, Jason. Let's talk again as we get closer to the election. But for now, appreciate your time, and good luck to you.
Hey, thank you so much, and I look forward to talking with you more, Brandon.
Awesome. All right, Jason, take care.
You too. Be well. Bye bye.